It's been a while since I've done a feedback video. I enjoy doing these every once in a while because I'll have a video that goes out and it'll have a lot of discussion in the comment section, replies, feedback, going back and forth, people with their thoughts, opinions, ideas. And yeah, I do read your comments and sometimes I even reply, especially if somebody asks me a question, like a legitimate question. If I have the answer, I'll give them the answer or I'll try to go research it for them. But yes, I do read the comments. So yeah, every once in a while I like to do feedback videos. And since a few days ago I did the Improving Safer Seas video for Sea of Thieves, it's gotten a few comments from you all. By the way, thanks to everybody that watched the video, left a like on the video, and also interacted in the comment section. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to read over the comments, the posts from the commenters, not the repliers. So even though I read the replies, I'm only going to reply to those that left the comment. I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to try to focus it on the theme of Safer Seas because a few of the comments had nothing to do with Safer Seas or the topic of the video, but still, it's fine. You can post whatever comments you want in my videos as long as it's nothing that breaks my rules, even if you're just going to post first, like some people still do for reasons. Anyways, let's go ahead and switch over here to my comments. And once again, I'm not going to read the replies. I'm only replying to the comments. So all this, I'm not going to reply to. I read it, but we're not replying to it. Okay, so we're going to start off with Nino. It would be awesome, but Rare hates PvE players for some reason. So I doubt that will ever happen, which is a shame because High Seas is so rage-inducing to play. I don't think that Rare hates PvE players, but I do think they cater more to the PvP players and not as much when it comes to the PvE. And that's one big reason why I came up with the idea for the video, because this is a good direction for PvE only players that don't really want to deal with the PvP. But I think that a lot of pirates in Sea of Thieves are kind of like me. They like PvP, but they also like PvE, but they don't mind the PvP on occasion. Jackson, let's see, as someone who plays mostly for PvP, I don't really see the point in penalizing Safer Seas at all. I really couldn't matter less how someone likes to play the game. And Jackson, you and I agree on this 100%. That's how I feel. Even though I do like PvE more than PvP, I still have grown to enjoy and accept and embrace PvP in the game. But I don't have a problem with players that just want to do PvE, and that's totally fine. Just like players that just want to do PvP in Hourglass or are going around in Reaper ships or just random shits attacking each other, that's totally fine. That's part of the fun of the game. But there definitely are plenty of comments, as you'll may notice in the video, that are like PvE only pirates, and they would prefer having more to do in Safer Seas. So I agree with you, Jackson. I don't really think that PvE players in Safer Seas should be penalized, but I do see the point of having a lower payout when it comes to the loot. So I'm fine with it being at 50% if they ever bumped it up to 50%. Some people just want to be able to have their own ships in Safer Seas. Let's see, the Slob Goblin. I honestly wouldn't even mind having to buy separate ships for High Seas and Safe Seas. Just let us use the Sovereigns, please. You know, this is an idea, Goblin, that I had. I didn't really mention it in the video, but I thought about it. Is maybe they can't allow us to use the High Seas ships that we've purchased in Safer Seas. Maybe there's some sort of code that prevents it. But since the Sovereigns already exist in Safer Seas, how about at the very least allow us to have a section of ships that we can purchase and customize for Safer Seas only, similar to the guild ships, even though you can pull the guild ships in and out at your discretion. I think when it comes to Safer Seas, two solutions. Either there's a way to make your ships available in Safer Seas and High Seas, but if there has to be a separation for reasons, then I think that a lot of pirates would be okay with buying ships specifically for Safer Seas and ships specifically for High Seas. Next, let's go to Metal Fusion. All right, so next we go to Nick Barton. PvP pirates are the only ones that matter. I wholeheartedly disagree with you, Nick. For one thing, this game has always been PvE, PvP based since the very beginning. I mean, you're a PvP pirate, which is fine. You can go do PvP all you want in the high seas, but you're not the only one that matters. The PvE players are just as important to this game as the PvP players. And if all the PvE pirates leave, then there's going to be a lot less people playing the game. Case in point, Arena was abandoned because of lack of PvP. Hourglass is having the same issue because there's not as many people wanting to play Hourglass. Now, Riley, Bounty, and I talked about some improvements that we would want to see in Hourglass, and some people in that video disagreed, but that's fine. You have a right to disagree, of course. But I do think that Hourglass needs some improvements to it. Case in point, I've mentioned this at the end of the video, is that Riley and I were going up against each other multiple times in 1v1 sloop Hourglass. And we were just doing it as an experiment. Plus, she was trying to rank up, and she couldn't find anyone to fight in Hourglass. And so, as an experiment, I was jumping into Hourglass as well, even though I'm not really a PvP pirate like she is, or an Hourglass enjoyer. But I was still doing it. But it was always her and me. I think it was like at least 12 times, maybe higher. I could be wrong, but I think it was like 17 times. I know that sounds crazy. But yeah, and PV, like this was for PS5. So maybe in crossplay, would have come across other players in crossplay, but on the PS5 PvP server, yeah, I mean, it was just Riley, like most of the time. And I think maybe once or twice, like I ran into a different pirate besides Riley. So yeah, look, we need the PvE pirates in the game just as much as we need the PvP pirates. That's the name of the game. But why do things that's going to drive the PvE pirates away? If they don't want to play in high seas, then we should at least give them more to offer in safer seas. That would increase the numbers of Sea of Thieves across the board. That would mean more people buying content from the Emporium. It would also mean more people buying the Plunder Pass, which means that it would guarantee that Sea of Thieves would get to continue getting content in future seasons. It's a win-win. Now, for the record, even if I disagree with your opinions, I still respect your opinions. I believe that we can have civil discourse. I wish we would get back to that as a society without name-calling or demonizing or dehumanizing each other. That's kind of the philosophy I have on my channel, on my Discord, is you're welcome to disagree. And if you reach a point where two parties can't agree, you simply agree to disagree, then move on to the next topic. So let's go on to Devil Chomp. Says, here's Rare's issue, or any hardcore PvP games issue. Not everyone likes that. Giving a player the ability to be shitty, grief, etc. is a terrible idea for a video game. Why? We've all experienced spending hours getting good loot just to be robbed by 3 a-holes on a brig, or one sweaty dude on an Athena-themed sloop that does nothing but play the game for hours a day. It sucks. It's discouraging. Yes, it's a pirate game, but some new players won't appreciate jumping into the high seas. That's, let's see, a bigger button to press. Launch a ship after hours, a few quests, get sunk by someone. It happened to me when I first started the game when it first released. But after a break, I came back with a friend. We grinded to Pirate Legends strategically. I don't mind PvP, but I'd rather both play PvE and PvP be optional. Sometimes I just want to get the accommodations, do tall tales uninterrupted. I think a lot of people feel that way. The stories in the game is always really cool. The players make it difficult to enjoy it. The PvPers will call it skill issues and troll you. And yeah, I have skill issues, but some point dealing with griefers, cheaters are not worth trying to get that practice in. The game numbers prove that just PvP is terrible. They had less players than Paladins at one point, and that's almost 9K. This game is the only one that's of its type right now, at least most successful. Cough, cough, skull and bones. Saver Seas just needs to be better. That 75% cut or lesser world events sucks. Well, I mean, I agree with you for the most part, Devil, even though Skull and Bones is admittedly a guilty pleasure of mine. That game needs a lot more work and help than Sea of Thieves. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There are players that have been playing Sea of Thieves for years. And players that have only been playing Sea of Thieves for months, even if they've gotten really good at PvP, there's a skill issue, right? There's this comparison back and forth where you're going to get somebody that's way more experienced than you are. And as I've talked about months ago in my Embracing the being a pirate video, like it's part of the game, especially if you take the risk of going onto high seas. But at the same time, I still think that PvE pirates that only want to do PvE shouldn't be completely punished like they are in safer seas. Now, I do think that there are certain world events that should be for high seas only, and the emissaries and the guilds should be high seas only. But I do think that we could have a pay boost in safer seas. And like I've mentioned, I do believe that players should be allowed to purchase and use their own captain ships in the sovereigns in safer seas as well. Next, let's go to Goblet Knight. Let me start this with some personal statistics. I have 1,400 hours in the game, primarily as a solo sloop player. Rewards for safer seas are completely fine where they are. The game is designed around PvP, PvE, and if you don't enjoy the game, find another game. I disagree, but you have a right to your opinion. Safer Seas is meant to be a tutorial or a refresher. I disagree with that, but okay. A place where people can become more comfortable with the core of the game mechanics without the lower gold rewards. There'd be no point in keeping the high seas options. What person in their right mind wouldn't go for Safer Seas if it meant they could grind everything without the threat or even sinking? I understand it's absolutely awful losing an hour or two's worth of work, as I work 40 hours a week and I play when I can, but Safer Seas was never intended to be the same level as High Seas. I also agree that you should be able to have captain ships in Safer Seas, but I strongly believe that all accommodations should be locked to High Seas. I think we agree for the most part on things, Knight. Now, I said that the PvP stuff should remain in high seas, obviously, like the PvP world events should remain in high seas, and there are accommodations that are PvP only, and there are certain things that you can do that are PvP only. That's totally fine. That has no place in safer seas. And I'm not calling for 100% boost to the payouts in safer seas. I'm just saying maybe boost it up to 50% at the most. But there's a lot of players that agree with you when it comes to, at the very least, let players have captains' ships and access to the sovereigns in safer seas. So even if the payout remains 30%, then I think that that's a nice compromise, is just let us have captain ships in safer seas, access to the sovereigns, and maybe rebalance the supply costs in safer seas for the the different crates at the merchants if you're going to keep the payouts that low. So yeah, once again, I'm not advocating for any of the PvP stuff to be moved over to safer seas. That should always be in high seas, but I don't see safer seas as a tutorial, but I do see where you're going with this, because we do technically have a tutorial in the game with the Pirate Lord, and some tutorial missions with the Gold Hoarders, Order of Souls, as well as the merchants. I do think that it is a good place, as I've mentioned in my guide, for new players to start, kind of like the kiddie pool, the shallow end of the pool. If they ever want to go into high seas, safer seas is a great place to start. Now, for the record, I think that all pirates should eventually strive to eventually get to the point where they're ready for high seas and not stay in safer seas indefinitely. My view on this now is that we can make it for everybody, where like players that like to PvE and PvP stay in high seas and we reap the rewards of high seas, but not completely punish the PvE only pirates that just want to sail around and do their own thing along with friends in safer seas. Next, let's go to Limok Pan. By the way, if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize. Devs haven't really been shy about the game being PvP focused, mostly about players fighting each other. Design favors you looting other players over spending a lot of time getting to loot. That unfortunately is the truth. You have people that will be grinding Fort of Fortune, Fort of the Damned, only to get robbed by other players. But that's part of being a pirate, I suppose. PvE content has always been lackluster as well. Few new enemies, dungeons over the years. The game has PvE, but just enough to get people to buy it or even try it. The devs never really cared about that. You can see in how long it took for the safer seas to be added and how punishing their design is. The devs seem downright salty about people not wanting PvP. Now, I don't know if that's true, because I don't have any contacts at Rare. I have nobody that I know at Rare that's a developer to tell me that. We're just assuming that that's the case, but I do think that they focus the game more on PvP aspects and mechanics, which is, that's fine. But I think it's wrong to completely neglect PvE-only players, and that's one reason why I'm advocating for improving safer seas. Now, here's somebody else that believes that Safer Seas is tutorial only. I disagree. I see the tutorial mode as the tutorial mode and Safer Seas as the PvE / I guess you could say shallow end of the pool. But once again, everyone has the right to their opinion. You play it to understand the mechanics. Then you go to High Seas for the full game experience. Don't want to play PvP, PvE games. Don't play, okay. Well, here's the thing. I don't play Call of Duty, so why would I complain about Call of Duty? I'm just talking about a game where you have the option to PvE or PvP. In Call of Duty, from my understanding, you have Warzone, you have the multiplayer. Those are PvP. You have the story mode, which is PvE, and then you have zombies, which is PvE. So they do separate the PvP aspects of Call of Duty from the PvE aspects of Call of Duty. But once again, I do understand why some people would consider Safer Seas to be a quote-unquote tutorial only, but it's not a tutorial only. It is a place where players can go in between the tutorial and High Seas to learn the basics, like some of you say, in order to get better at the game. But once again, all I'm saying is that it would be nice for the PvE only pirates if you had the captain ships and at the very least the sovereigns as things you would have access to in Safer Seas. Next, let's go to Malmur Gaming. Guys, I have a small pet peeve. I know some of you may not like this, but I like paragraphs. I really do. They make it easier for me to keep up with what somebody's talking about. So in the future, if y'all could do paragraphs in the comment section, that'd be awesome. Especially if you're going to write a long comment. It just makes it easier for me and others to keep up with. Just saying. All right, so this is what Malmur Gaming had to say. I was literally having to rant my friends and my girlfriend the other day about how Safe Sea sucks. You're PvP, PvE pirates. Sometimes you just want to relax, chill, sail, make tens of thousands of gold for some measly effort. You argued that it would be, you don't like the restriction as strict to 70%, and 50 to 7% is what you think Rare should do. Safe Seas, in your opinion, is meant for new players to learn, intermediate players to make money, laid back players to have a good time, and maybe even pro players to practice new tags, sometimes like that, on the AI before testing in PvP and Lime combatants. I think that's what I envision Safer Seas as, not simply just a tutorial only, but a place for PvE pirates that don't want PvP nonsense, or pirates like me that like the High Seas but sometimes just want to go into Safer Seas and chill and not be bothered, or like you said, for new players that want to practice their ship skills, like shooting ships at skelly ships and learning how to micromanage everything and multitask the cannons with the repairs, with the bucketing, with the sails, and also fighting skellies and ocean crawlers on the islands and getting better at that with the guns and the swords and all the new stuff that they've just added to the game in season 14, like the blowpipe, the grapple gun, and before that the throwing knives and the double barrel pistol. So yeah, I see Safer Seas as a place for a lot of different players, not just starting players or PvE only players. I also propose the idea of Rare making 2 game modes independent of each other, 2 different bank accounts, 2 different cosmetic interiors. If you had to restart your gold reserves, doubloons, etc., and got 75 to 100% of value loot, unlock cosmetics, obtain accommodations, unlock tall tales, those locked to Safer Seas players might be inclined to stay with the game mode. To do that, the grind for Dark Tide set, let's see, at their own pace. It can be very discouraging for new players to try this, to get crapped on, and a few hours of work taken away with no profit. Hardcore intermediate players say it's a skill issue. Yeah, you're right, but the average casual gamer or parent of their kids aren't going to want to deal with the players that want to play, make money, look cool in the outfits, pull up to an island with a shiny, spiffy new loadout and get destroyed by some skeletons, take the loot. Also, adding any cosmetics earned in Safe Seas will stay in Safe Seas, not accessible to High Seas unless unlocked in the same way. By repeating the process, maybe even for older players, any cosmetics earned in High Seas may be available to customize themselves or from ship in Safe Seas. Let's see, let us have sovereigns. Say I sold 100 in pieces by hand to the company a few days ago. It was dreadful. I have other ideas, proposals. Well, I'm not going to. This is my reply to you, Mal. So yeah, I do appreciate your reply and everyone else's reply. I just think that it's a lot simpler to allow players to have the same account, the same gold, the same doubloons, same ancient coins, the same cosmetics in Safe Seas and High Seas. Unfortunately, that means that players in safe seas that only want a PvE cannot have access to some of the cosmetics and rewards and accommodations of PvP players in high seas. That's just an unfortunate reality here. That is, I guess you could say, the compromise of improving safe seas, the realization that it is only meant to be PvE. And if you want to eventually get some of the cosmetics and eventually, dare I say, the curses like the Athena's blessing for the Athenas, the Guardians, or the Skelly curses for the Reapers and the Servants of the Flame, then you're going to have to do PvP, my friend. You're going to have to go into high seas and you're going to have to do the hourglassing. That's just the reality of the situation. In order to get those things, you have to be willing to put forth the effort. Like my fiance Riley Blackfox and our friend Bounty Hunter, they both wanted separate skins. Riley really wanted the Athena's blessing, so she spent hours and hours and hours grinding hourglass. Bounty really wanted the Skelly curse, so he also spent hours and hours and hours and hours, countless hours, both of them grinding to get their curses. That's just the way it goes. If you want something really bad, you have to put forth the effort to earn it when it comes to everything related to PvP. But yeah, I think that the sovereigns and captainships should definitely be added to safer seas. But I don't really see the point of having two separate accounts. I think that's probably something Rare wouldn't do, but then again, I could be wrong. Next, let's go to Timothy Joyce, and thank you, Timothy, for using paragraphs. I'm one of the newer PlayStation players that's worked hard to try to improve the game to get gold. Still not the best at PvP, but I've taken a fair shake of managing myself on the high seas. I've had both very positive and friendly interaction with Xbox Pirates, in particular showing me the ropes. I've also gotten my fair share of players that take great delight in destroying me as they roll on the deck laughing, sprinkle in some rude remarks, and generally negative attitude towards the entire encounter. And, that's the way it goes with so many games out there online. You come across good apples and bad apples. That's just a sad reality. And there's plenty of great players in the game, but there's other a-holes too. I mean, that's just a reality, especially in a pirate game. Ultimately, the game can be fun to play, but it can get under your skin through the actions of other players. Toxic behavior isn't unique to Sea of Thieves. Exactly. It's in most online games. But I think their behavior is not condoned. Then you see the average Joe come back to high seas a little more. In general, I think folks take a binary stance of, quote-unquote, number one, it's a pirate game, just still being sunk, or two, let's make Sea of Thieves a sea of friends. If the community at large can take the middle of the road approach, allow you to do what you want, and if you get into a scuffle, just try to not be a sore winner or sore loser, get through respectfully. A little sportsmanship can go a long ways in hours of grinding at the game. And I think that's the problem is, unfortunately, a lot of people are not exactly good sports. Like, if I lose a PvP fight, I'm a good sport about it. I got taken out by a 2v1 sloop the other night because all I had on me at the time was the blowpipe and the grappling gun because I was experimenting with them in high seas and also trying to do accommodation. And for the record, the grapple gun is not a PvP weapon, so I was just trying to fight him off with my blowpipe. I got a few hits on them, but every time I respawned, they were already on my ship, so I couldn't exactly get to my armory and grab a sword or the pistol or the blunderbuss, so I had to make do with what I had. And ultimately, they did sink my ship, but did I rage about it? No. It is what it is. So, I mean, yeah, I think at least I was a good sport about my defeat. But I also learned in a PvP situation, the grapple gun is not your friend, unless you can use it to get away, I suppose. In my opinion, I think high seas will age better and better for the health of the game in the long run. I understand Safer Seas was made philosophically to help newer players like me get on their feet. I don't disagree with the points made in the video, and in fact, I agree with some of the points made. However, I also think that Safe Seas has improved over time through the updates, so Sea of Thieves will have more drastic split of the community between PvP players and PvE players. I think the two sides will play with another even less in high seas and will suffer for it. Now, see, on that, here's the thing. I guess I see it kind of like three factions, three different groups. There's the PvP pirates, which they also do some PvE, but they're mostly PvP focused, right? And then you have the pirates like me that, do a great deal of PvE, but also on occasion do PvP as well because that's part of the game. But then there's that third faction that is mostly PvE, and they'll PvP only if they have to. And the sad reality is so many players have been driven from the game, like I talked about a few months ago with that dramatic drop in player count on PlayStation, because I think a lot of them were just getting destroyed in high seas by players that were far more experienced than them at PvP, or maybe they got into the game not fully understanding that it was also a PvP game. So I guess what I'm saying is, with higher seas having some improvements, it would bring back those players to Sea of Thieves and increase the player count, which benefits all of us, the PvP pirates, the PvP PvE pirates, and the PvE pirates. So I feel like it would be a win for the community as a whole, because the PvE pirates, they don't want to do anything with the rest of us anyways. They just want to be left alone. Coma Cozy. I'd rather just play Safer Seas. I enjoy just doing PvE, having some drinks, relaxing, laughing with friends who also don't want to have to eat, sleep, and breathe the game to enjoy it. I also don't think Athenas or even level caps should exist. I don't even care if the Athenas didn't give gold at all. I just want to be able to play my favorite quests. Well, I do see your point of view about wanting to just go into Safer Seas and be left alone. I get that. I sympathize with you. That's why I'm calling for some improvements to Safer Seas. However, like I mentioned, as being a PvE, PvP player, I like the fact that we have rewards and encouragement in order to continue to play the game and become pirate legends and become an Athena. And if you want to eventually become like a guardian or servant, you have to be willing to get into hourglassing to do that. So I like the fact that there's kind of a ladder that you have to climb in order to like get those unique items, whether it's for the Athenas or the servants or the reapers, or like the Athena's blessing or the Skelly curses, or some of the other curses in the game. Like the easiest one is the Ashen curse. You only have to do a tall tale a few times in order to get the Ashen curse. But I like the fact that you actually have to go and do and earn these accommodations, these rewards, and it's not simply just given to you. Next, let's go to Jet Set. High Seas is like Safer Seas because I don't see anyone for hours sometimes when I do. I don't really care if they take my stuff. I will try to fight back, of course, but a part of the game, grind isn't that bad as people think it is. You don't lose anything of value and know the quest and take 50 minutes or 25,000 K of gold. Yeah, it's a lot easier now than at the launch of the game, and I was playing the game at launch years ago back on the Xbox, and it was a lot harder to earn gold back then. And there was a lot less content, a lot less stuff to do in Sea of Thieves in the beginning. But yeah, I think I have the same kind of like attitude you have, Jet. Like, even though I had some things taken from me by those other players, I really didn't have that much stuff on my ship, and I wasn't really like in the game the other night to get loot because I have like at least 18 million in gold on my character. I was just doing it to like get better at the blowpipe and also the grapple gun and try and knock out accommodation. So them still in my loot, it was like, oh, bloody pirates. Oh, no, they attacked my ship. They stuck aboard my ship and attacked me. That's just what pirates do. So I don't really have an issue with that at all. All right, so we got 2 comments left, so let's get to it. Bullet Batter. I agree that Safer Seas should be made for more balance with high seas. I'm not a PvP person. Never have been, never was, never will be. You see, unlike the Sweat Lords, I actually have a life outside of gaming, so I can't dedicate hours upon hours to the quote-unquote get good, but I still love this game for its lore, gameplay, and environments. And yeah, I mean, I'm not good at PvP either, but I do admittedly enjoy some PvP, but once again, we're all different, right? Some of us just love the PvP. Some of us just want PvE, and that's why I want to be able to make Sea of Thieves more appealing and Safer Seas for the PvE-only pirates. I do see this game as a pirate game about piracy. Its core mechanic is the game. Doesn't mean it can't be enjoyed for both sides, though. Exactly. What I suggest is to increase the gold payout for Safer Seas, but any mechanic that strictly relies on PvP aspects to stay in high seas as a means to entice people to play it. You and I are on the same page here, my friend. But if there was a way to change it so everything was in both versions, I do have an idea of how to fix that. Let's just say they allow Skull's Siren Song to be in Safer Seas instead of struggling against opposing crews. Why not just have a bunch of Skelly ships try to stop you? Give the player the illusion of being on high seas without trolling the risk of losing all your loot. Yeah, that is an interesting idea when it comes to Skull of Siren Song. is like whenever you take the skull onto any island, whether it's the final island or just a random island for you and your friends to use the blowpipes for commendations to kill as many scullies as possible with the poison darts. That's something I'd recommend, by the way. Yeah, I think that maybe in Safer Seas, if they were to ever add the Siren Song heist in Safer Seas, that, yeah, you do want to get chased, right? You don't want it to be so easy, breezy, because the idea of the Siren Song is it's technically PvP. It's whoever can get the two different pieces together and go deliver the skull, gets the gold. They get the 50,000 gold. They get the credit for it. And it opens the door for other players to try and stop them in high seas. Unfortunately, not that many people really care for the Siren Song anymore as they once did. So I personally don't have a problem with it also being in Safer Seas, but like you said, with the caveat that instead of other players coming after you, the moment you had the skull aboard your ship, you would have to fight off skelly ships. Not like a ton of skelly ships. It wouldn't be like ridiculous. But yeah, you would have to deal with a few skelly ships before you got to your destination. And once you got on shore, yeah, you'd have to also evade skellies trying to stop you. Still can't do emissary flags in Safer Seas since it's something Reapers rely on. But other things like Athena's, For the Dam, etc. can be altered. Yeah, see, here's the thing. In that regard, I kind of disagree because, like you mentioned earlier, there are things that should remain in high seas. And unfortunately, that means that there are things that are PvP only and Pirate Legend only and only available if you go into high seas. That's just a reality. But for the most part, we agree, and that's totally fine by me. I mean, not everyone's going to agree on every single thing. So, yeah, I think that the emissary stuff, once again, should stay in high seas. Athena's, high seas. For the Dam, For the Fortune, all that does not need to be altered or tweaked for Safer Seas. But I think a lot of people wouldn't have a problem with maybe like a 25,000 version of Siren Song that's like half the reward cost, like 25K instead of 50K, as long as there were pirate ships coming at you in the final stretch. I think that would be a good balance. And finally, let's go to Synaxi. I agree on lowering the supply costs in Safer Seas, but I don't think they should raise the gold because the way they think Safer Seas is meant to be a learning tool for the new players about the game mechanics and overall environment. The game main purpose is to be a pirate game with the sensation of, quote unquote, I don't know what's going to happen on this adventure. I have many memorable moments in my Sea of Thieves playthrough. 99% of those moments have with player interactions, friendly encounters, random people. But why don't I think they should raise the gold? Because players would just stay in Safer Seas with the mentality of farm to buy cosmetics. They would use to sink every 5 seconds in battle because they don't learn the PvP, and they will become frustrated with the game. Yes, I struggled a lot when I started the game, probably because I jumped straight into high seas, but the game is way more fun and unpredictable. I really get the point of Safer Seas, but I think it's just temporary reality for new players, and eventually they have to learn the piracy. Sorry for making that much long. My English is... Don't worry about that, dude. It's fine, man. Look, there's so many languages in the world. You did a good job. And yeah, I do see your point and other people's points about how you feel like Safer Seas is meant to be an extension of the tutorial learning place for people learning a bit more about the mechanics of like the sloop, if they're just going to solo sloop, the sails, the cannons, using the map, the compass, learning to combat skelly ships, as well as fighting, various NPCs on islands. I understand that point of view. And for the record, I've enjoyed my experience in ICs, the PvP encounters as well, because sometimes we run across like some friendly pirates. We have some good laughs, some good times. We alliance together. We do things together. And then, yeah, there are times whenever you're fighting over the burning blade, and that's fun as well. So, yeah, I've had fun doing PvE and PvP experiences in high seas. But unfortunately, as we've seen in a few comments, there are definitely pirates out there and Sea of Thieves that just want to focus on the PvE stuff. And I disagree with the whole notion of, well, if you don't like the PvP, go play something else. I think that is bad for the game as a whole. I think that hurts Sea of Thieves, and I think that it could potentially bring numbers down, and I want to bring the numbers up. I want more people to play the game. Now, when it comes to all the things that we talked about today, by the way, I do appreciate everybody's comments and your replies. I did read the replies. And look, I have no problem with people disagreeing with each other. I just ask in the future that people in my comment section try to be civil with one another. That's all I ask. You can disagree with each other. That's fine. And you can always disagree with me. I'm fine with people disagreeing with me. And sometimes people bring up valid points that might change or alter my opinion about the game. Like, case in point, a few months ago, I had the attitude of, yeah, this game is PvP, PvE, and like Safer Seas should be only for players that are new to the game, that want to spend more time in Safer Seas in order to get used to it, the mechanics that we talked about, before going into High Seas. And I think that it benefits more pirates to consider eventually going from Safer Seas to High Seas, because there is more to do in High Seas, and I think there should always be more to do in High Seas, but Safer Seas. But over time, I have read comments here and there. I have watched some videos from other players' points of view that are PvE only, and I do agree that Safer Seas, even if it was originally intended to be nothing more than a learning tool or an extension of the tutorial, I don't think that's what PvE players want it to be. They would like for it to be a little bit more than simply just an extension of the tutorial. And if one thing has to be sacrificed in order for Safer Seas to be better, the gold can be sacrificed. It can still remain at 30%, in my opinion, if it means that players have an easier time of being able to have access to captain ships and to the sovereigns. Because you had a few people complain about that, rightfully so, because it's way easier to take your captain ship full of loot to the sovereign, harpoon it all off the boat, and sell it straight to the sovereign, instead of separating it between the gold hoarders, order of souls, and merchants. That's just very, very time consuming. And I don't think that PvE pirates should be punished for that in Safer Seas. So I do think that players should be able to purchase ships for Safer Seas, even if there is a separation between the high sea ships in your inventory or your fleet and your Safer Sea ships. I think that would be an acceptable separation there. I personally would prefer it to where we could take our ships from High Seas to Safer Seas, but if for whatever rhyme or reason we have to separate them, then that's better than what we currently have, which is nothing more than these chartered ships, which is annoying. I guess the two annoying things to me about chartered ships is throwing on the cosmetics, which takes a moment or two. I'd rather just have my own personal captain ships. And once again, this is for the players that just want to do PvE, is the lack of the sovereigns. If I want to do looting and going out and doing quests, I'll go in the High Seas. I like the risk. I know that there's a possibility that I might get sank. So that's just the way it is. But my perspective on Sea of Thieves is clearly different than other players. But I think that other players have just as much right to play and enjoy the game as I do, and just as much as the PvP players do. And look, I think that eventually there might be a time when enough of the PvP only, PvE only pirates in Safer Seas, some of them may decide after a while, when they get really good at the mechanics of selling the ship and fighting skellies with their ship and everything else, that maybe they might want to go from the shallow end of the pool to somewhere a little deeper like High Seas. So I think that there's nothing wrong with making Safer Seas more accommodating for players, whether it's new pirates or just PvE only pirates. And as some of you mentioned, not just for PvE only pirates, some of us that just want to come in here and focus on tall tales or commendations, or just chill with friends and just goof off without having to worry about some a-hole level 5 Reaper running you over. If I want that, obviously we just stay in High Seas if you want that risk. So I do think that some improvements need to be made to Safer Seas. Whether or not Rare ends up doing that in the future remains to be seen. But I do also want more PvP content as well. I would like for the Athenas to eventually have some sort of answer to the Burning Blade, their own man of war to combat the Burning Blade. That'd be epic if we had two crews of players, two man of wars going at it in High Seas, Burning Blade versus, Athena Fortune 2 or whatever the Athena's version of the Man of War would be. That would be amazing because, like I said, I do enjoy the PvP aspect of the game just like I enjoy the PvE. So I like it both. But once again, there are players that just want the PvE. But If you want the PvP, well, too bad. You have to go to high seas. That's just the reality. But yeah, once again, thanks for your comments, everybody. I did appreciate reading over all your comments. And yeah, I think this is interesting stuff there. And yeah, people disagreed. Once again, that's totally cool with me. And anyways, I guess we'll probably do more feedback videos in the future, depending on future topics I come up with. Every now and then I come up with something that might be worth discussing further besides my video. And I like the feedback because it's my ability to like interact with you, my viewers, new and old, and just like read what you have to say and then give you my 2 cents in a respectful manner, even if we happen to disagree. But here is another question for you all. What future content would you like to see eventually added to Sea of Thieves? Feel free and let me know below in the comments section.